In the second episode, Differentiating in a Sea of Sameness, Bob McCarthy, Director of Content Strategy at Square 2, will chat with one of our fractional CMOs, Beth Shope, who works with one of our software clients, Solver. They will share with you the work they've done together to differentiate Solver and help them create a story for their company that is truly positioning them as remarkable in their industry. Beth and Bob will talk specifically about how making Solver remarkable helped them deliver significant business results in a very short time frame. And at the end of that episode, there are special offers for all of our viewers. Don't forget to check them out after that episode is over.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bob McCarthy, Director of Content Strategy at Square 2, and welcome to Differentiating in a Sea of Sameness, the next installment in our four-part series, Your B2B Big Story, a Missed Opportunity, and the Missing Piece to a Revenue Growth Strategy. I'm pretty jazzed for this episode, not only because it's one of my favorite topics, but because I get to hang out and chat with the ever-insightful, always smiling Beth Shope. Beth, say hi to our audience and tell them a little bit about what you do.
Hi, everybody. I'm Beth Shope, and I am the working CMO over at Solver Global Inc. And I work with them on their marketing and bringing more business in.
And for those that don't know exactly what Solver Global does, I'm aware because I know you and I know Solver pretty well. But how would you describe the service that they provide?
So what Solver does is really they accelerate better decisions. And what they do is they have our software that sits basically on top of your ERP, and it brings insights into all that data for you. So you have dashboards, reporting, visualizations of your data. So it really allows people to see what they have under the hood.
All right, let's get into it. In an increasingly crowded digital market, too many competitors look and sound alike. This is especially true in B2B, which tends to emphasize product over brand. In an effort to differentiate, B2B companies typically fall back on features or quantifiers such as more, better, faster. The problem is that features aren't usually terribly unique. Most products are more similar than they are different. And those features often require deeper explanation or are typically cold and emotionless. They don't necessarily connect with their audience. Creative messaging, particularly in the B2B space where it's underutilized, has the power to separate you from the pack in a memorable way that evokes emotion and quickly tells a compelling story. In this episode, we're going to explore effective messaging and how B2B companies can take advantage of it to differentiate themselves in a sea of sameness. All right, Beth, so this is going to be a very foundational question that maybe seems more obvious than it needs to be, but what is differentiation and why is it so important?
Differentiation is really setting yourself apart from the pack. It's showing and defining what makes you and your services and your company different than your competitors. So what is that one thing your company does or your product does that separates you out from your competitors and really is the one thing that you do well?
Right. And I think often there's this misunderstanding. When we work with clients, they'll come and say, I don't have that one thing that absolutely sets me apart. And what we'll often tell them is just like, sometimes it's one thing, sometimes it's a combination of things, sometimes it's just the creative, it's the story that we tell that differentiates you. And I think it's become so incredibly important to establish that differentiation because there are so many businesses out there right now. Everyone is emailing you. Everyone has a website. Everyone is running a social media account or ads, and audiences are just being overwhelmed with all kinds of marketing. So if you are not differentiated, if you look like everyone else, the chances that you're going to stand out enough to be memorable and be part of the buying decision over the course of, say, 3, 6, 9 months, if it's a long buying cycle, is pretty slim. So it's essentially become imperative that you differentiate yourselves just so you can stay top of mind and stay in the mix when somebody's narrowing it down to those 3 to 4 companies that they're thinking they're going to buy from.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And over the years, it's gotten harder and harder to differentiate yourself because, as you said, the volume has gotten so much more. The amount of information that people are intaking is so much more. And you know, we used to always talk about the sales funnel, and now, you know, we talk about this iconic buyer journey, because of that, because of all that information that's hitting people daily, and not even just like when you think you're in sales mode or you think you're in buying mode. It's creeped its way because of our phones, and you know, everybody is, you know, listening to things off hours, that those retargeting ads, like everybody is getting bombarded with so much information all the time. As you said, if you don't have anything to differentiate you, you're just part of the noise.
Yeah.
So it's like you said, it's gotten more and more important as that volume has grown, I think.
Agreed. You really need that hook. So speaking of the hook and great messaging, I think often this is where businesses will come back and say, awesome, I need a great message. What is that? And in my mind, like, there is no one answer. I actually think that great messaging is somewhat subjective. It's you know, equal parts science and art form. I lean a little bit more towards the art as a creative, but I do think it's subjective and somewhat personal. So when you think about campaigns that really catch and hold attention, what stands out to you as making up a great message? Like, what are the qualities you like in messaging?
Um, I think even though, you know, we're talking B2B, I think there's sort of this wrong idea out there, this misconception that B2B selling is not emotional. I think every decision we make, there's that level of emotion. So I do, even in the B2B space, I like messaging that hooks into some level of emotion, even if that's around just your work life and what pains you need solved for your day to make your day better. There's an emotional level there. So for me, I think it's important, especially in the B2B world, I think it's a good way to differentiate yourself is having some level of an emotional hook in the message itself.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like, I will say all the time that I go, you know, there's this balance for me between in great messaging that is emotion and cleverness and complexity. But I think emotion is 1A, and it's I think of it not that different than like a great song. You know,
Yeah.
when you have a really great song that resonates with you on an emotional level, it kind of like sticks with you. Like, you know, you find yourself humming the melody, or it's just, it follows you long after you heard it. And I think emotional messaging can do the same thing, which is, it's what you want, right? Like, I look
Right.
at your message, or I see the ad, I see the video, and a half hour later, it's still kind of working on me a bit that I remember it,
Then.
you know,
Mhm.
because it's connected with you so deeply. So I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, and to your point too, I mean, cleverness, like something that's funny or cute or just like makes you go, oh, ha ha, ha, you know, kind of get that little giggle in the back of your head when you read it. Like that, I always think too that, you know, if you find something that can give you that little bit of cleverness, again, it's something that brings your thought, stays in your thought and stays in your head, and you go, oh yeah, oh, did you see that ad? It wasn't that funny. Like, you know, those types of things definitely help your recognition and help that brand stay.
And you know, I think the misconception that a lot of people in B2B have is that there is no room for emotion
Mhm.
within B2B, whether it's because of the type of industry that industries that populate B2B, or because they don't feel like they're necessarily selling one to one on a personal level. But I really don't separate. So two things: I don't separate B2B and B2C. I just look at messaging as messaging. And the other part is, because everyone thinks that way, that is actually a great opportunity for you. It's your advantage. Like, let everyone else think that it has no place for it. You be the
Yep.
one that does an emotional message, and you're going to stand out from the pack. So that's lesson one, I think, in differentiating yourself in B2B with a strong message.
Yeah, totally agree.
Okay, so now that we've talked a little bit about like what we think great messaging is, I don't want to leave it there. I actually want to take the old writing adage, since I'm a writer at heart, into take it into account, which is show don't tell. So let's kind of dive into a few examples that we both love. Since we're talking about differentiation, I think two great examples to pull up that are the classic examples of differentiating in a non-differentiated space are the Nike Just Do It campaign and pretty much any Apple campaign. But the one that comes to mind is the Think Different campaign that Apple unleashed, geez, it must be like 20 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
And people point to them as because they're brilliant creative, and they are.
Yep.
They're so brilliant in terms of the creative, and they are a gold standard. But the reason I bring them up here is not that like, hey, that's the level of creative you should aspire for. Like, great if you can, but those cost billions of dollars, to develop and run. I think the bigger lesson to take for them is in both cases, both companies admitted, listen, Nike sneakers at their core are not really that much different than Adidas or Reebok or
Yep.
any other sneaker out there. So how do you differentiate then? Then you have this great campaign around it that strikes an emotional chord with people. And to their credit, it's been running now. It aired in the late 80s. It's still, they bring it back every couple of years. Apple's another great example. We think of Apple, we think, oh, they're differentiated because of their design or their innovation. But when the Think Different campaign came out, Steve Jobs told the audience as he introduced it, like, what are we going to talk about in ads? Like, how much faster our processor is, how much more memory we have. We're going to talk about features. People don't care about that, and they don't know enough to really say, like, is that true? No, you have to work at their heartstrings a little bit. And they came out with that Think Different campaign that really tied, geniuses across all industries and history to the people that use it, so that people could identify themselves as like, yes, that's how I see myself. I see myself like an Albert Einstein or a Bob Dylan or a John Lennon. I think different, and they would probably use an Apple, and so therefore I should too. So I think they're brilliant examples. One that's a little bit more contemporary that I really like. We discussed these examples to ahead of time. We brought them to the table, and we're, I guess, both very predictable. We brought our local examples with us. So
Yeah.
I am originally from Massachusetts, which makes me a complete and utter masshole in New England vernacular. And if you know anything about Massachusetts, I grew up in a town. I lived in a town that was less than 10,000 people, that yet probably had 4 Dunkin' Donuts in it. And, there is a Dunkin' Donuts within like every 2 miles. That's how popular they are. But people will say when they're buying coffee, they have a preference, and I'm not going to say that Dunkin' Donuts taste exactly the same as Starbucks or any other, but there's a million coffee choices out there. And when they started going national, they started with that the campaign "America Runs on Dunkin'," and I think it's brilliant because it starts to tell a story about the type of person that they envision. It's not, Starbucks is seen as a bit more upscale. They're not the gas station coffee, but it's something that started in Boston, which is that everyone stopped at Dunkin' Donuts on their way to work to grab their coffee. It's just part of what you do, whether you are a blue collar pipe fitter or you work at the office. It's like a line out the door of people fueling up for the workday. Or getting something at 3 o'clock to make it through. And so I thought it was great. They did it in a creative way with their little icons, but I thought the message was great. And it really tapped into an identity around like, this is who we are and who we speak to. Not so much the, $8 latte, but at the time, the $2, cup of coffee. So that's mine. You brought a couple of interesting ones. The first one we'll discuss is it's a classic, the Wendy's "Where's the Beef" campaign. So you want to tell me a little bit about what you like about that? It's a favorite of mine as well, but what do you like about it?
Those were always some of my favorite commercials. I just thought the messaging was always, it was brought across with so much humor, and you can't forget those iconic little ladies sitting there looking at looking under the bun, and but the way that the message really sort of, it's bringing value. They're talking about kind of like the product, but they're not, so it's like they're coming through and they're like, that message really sort of, it, like I said, was talking earlier about being clever. Like anyone who ever like grew up in our, age ourselves here a little bit, in our, they all know that commercial because it was clever, it was funny, it sticks with you. But it really is sort of talking about a product feature in a way, to kind of split into the conversation we're having around B2B. It's talking about a product feature, but in a way that's so funny and so clever that it stays with you. And it really is talking about a value add. They're adding, because Wendy's, you can see the beef. The other restaurants, we'll call them, you don't know where the beef is. Where's the beef? So
right. I mean, I remember it like, I guess we're aging ourselves a bit, but also what I remember about it is that like I was a kid and like me and my sister would run around like, squawking, where's the beef? I mean, every kid did. But I also remember that it stuck with adults too. It was just like a catchphrase that everyone used. And when you look back on the commercial now, I think to your point, like the differentiator there, when you get to the heart of it, is more like, well, our patties are bigger. You could, and I think like in a B2B space, somebody would just come out and that would be their headline. Our patties are bigger. And Wendy's knew enough to be like, that doesn't stick with people. That doesn't mean anything to them. But having a bunch of old ladies, lifting up the bun and asking like, where's the beef in this humorous way, it stuck with them. The message got across and it stuck with you long after. And so when you're driving down the road with your kids in the minivan or a station wagon or whatever you had, and they go by a Wendy's, like that's what stuck with them. Is like, can we stop it? Where's the beef? Let me go there. Which was big for them because who at the time, like I think that was my first introduction to Wendy's. I mean, everything was McDonald's was, the big player, and suddenly you come in with this great messaging that puts you in league with like global giants.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, the other great message that you brought to the table is local for you, which is the Kodak moments. And I think you had initially asked me, is this differentiated? And I said, this is absolutely a differentiator. So why don't you dive into what it is you love about the Kodak Moments campaign?
All right. Well, I'm again local. I'm from Rochester, grew up in Rochester, so Kodak was a big deal around here always. Everyone's parents, somebody knew somebody who worked there. So, but they put together this campaign around the Kodak moment and capturing the moment. And I always, that really makes you think about like why you take pictures. The campaign came out around a time where, Kodak has gone through so many iterations in its life as a company, where at that point, they were looking for that differentiator. They were looking for something to capture the market because Fuji was starting to come up, and there were all these other companies that were starting to come up, and a camera was a camera kind of right at that point. We weren't into the digital age. We weren't into some of the other innovations that were coming very quickly, but we weren't quite there yet. And that message and really talking and honing in on that emotion and why you take it, why you're taking the pictures, and then do you trust that moment? There's that trust factor there that they bring out, and that comes out with that emotion. Do you trust the film that you're using to capture and keep that moment? Because you're not going to get it back. At the time, everybody wasn't walking around with cell phones taking pictures of everything, and you didn't have 5 people taking a picture of the same event. So it was really around that trust and capturing that emotion of why you use the film and why you're using the product and what's the outcome. What are you really looking for at the end of the day?
Yeah, it's interesting to look back on it now, because we do take for granted that we have phones that you just take as many pictures as you want, and then whenever you want, and it all gets captured. At the time, it wasn't even just having a camera, because that Kodak Moments campaign was also around the film, like buy the film, and you could be a little stingy with the film or with the picture taking because you have to buy it, you have to have it developed. And the Kodak Moments, without saying like take more pictures, was really getting to that core of like, you need to be doing this. It's an investment in later. You're going to look back, and so it's without getting into our film is better than Fuji's, or You know, make sure you take more pictures. It was this really emotional thing that people could really grab onto: family moments, kids growing up, you know, grandparents, and realizing that, like, hey, things don't stay the same forever. Kids grow up, family members, you know, age and pass on, and but you can have it forever if you just take a picture and buy our film and buy, you know, tons of it. You
And
know, I
by
mean, that's
Kodak.
the
Yeah.
subtext. You know, what's Fuji going to tell you? You know, like, you know,
Right.
so, but it was a great differentiated message. Okay, so this all brings us to Solver. So again, Solver is a platform. It isn't an ERP. It plugs into your ERP to make it more efficient, to provide more data from disparate places. It helps make better decisions. But they are not the only, you know, what's known as a CPM, corporate performance management solution. There are others out there. At the time, when I think, Beth, we first met, you and the Solver team, um, you know, there were a number of competitors that we looked at with you, and it was all very much feature based. We help you work in Excel. Ours delivers better ROI. No, ours delivers better ROI. So it's all the things that we typically see in B2B in terms of messaging. But I think the interesting thing, and I'm wondering if you can provide a little insight around, is that Solver was different than a lot of clients we have in that we didn't have to say, you need new messaging, you need differentiated messaging. Solver, you came to us and you said, this is what we need, so help us develop it. So give us a little insight around why it was that creating a differentiated message was so important to Solver.
Yeah, so Solver, we've been working for, you know, a year or so on what we call Quick Start, which is an implementation process. And what this process does is allow you to do something that in the industry has never really been done before, which is be able to implement and deploy within a day and get your data out of your ERP and really get that into the CPM solution almost instantly. So we knew we had a differentiating process, but we also knew we didn't have a way to talk about it because it is new, because it is out of the ordinary for the industry. We really wanted to make sure that we were honing that message correctly and getting it out there so that we could help people understand what this really meant, because it was brand new to the industry. It's brand new to everyone who's going to be hearing it. We wanted to make sure we had that message defined and understood, and that we had a way to get it out there and put it out into the world so that people could understand it.
Yeah, I kind of one of the things that I found interesting is that, like I said at the top, you know, the team at Solver knew they knew that they wanted something different. You came to us with a differentiator that was around faster, and I think sometimes that businesses hear us say, listen, don't lean into features, and they say, well, but wait a second, you're talking about, you know, you're talking about a feature with Wendy's, and it gets back to that. Yes, you want to use that feature as the foundation or the starting point for your message. It's just,
Yep.
if we had come forward and said to your team, awesome, here's your message, our CPM is faster, you know, or
Right.
our CPM gets you up and running faster, you know, like, fantastic, great. It's the old adage of, like, you know, benefits before features. It's like, create a story that, you know, puts me in the position that I understand why this feature is important, and it makes a connection with me. I started off at a company that sold barbecue. You're right near, you know, Dinosaur. So,
Oh, yeah.
so you have a little experience with the smoky goodness that is barbecue. But one of my first lessons when I went in as a copywriter was, hey, do not talk about, you know, the 18 by 36, you know, grate on there. Talk about the 18 by 36 grate in the context of, like, what you can fit on there.
Mm-hmm.
You can fit a rack of ribs, a brisket, a pulled pork, and, you know, 2 whole chickens. Like, put it in my head what I could be doing with this, you know. And
Yep.
so that's sort of, you know, I think what Solver was looking for is, like, here's our feature around faster, but we want a story around it, and that also pulls in not just the feature, but everything around our brand. Um,
And
I
we really
did,
also, oh, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. We really also wanted to make sure that we were focusing on that outcome. Like, yeah, like to your point, you're like, yeah, it's great that we could do it faster, but what does that mean for you as the user? And really focusing and finding that messaging that also focuses in on that outcome.
so I think one of the interesting things is I did go into the Wayback Machine, and I do want to take a quick look at the old messaging when Solver came to us, and then we'll take a look at the new messaging to give really just an idea of what the transformation was like. So we have since worked with you very closely on updating the message for Solver, but when we first started chatting, this was essentially the message, which there really isn't a message, but it was exactly what you see with the competitors. We got this, if you could call it a hero at the top, that is on the left side, a top rated leader on G. But these are the differentiators that we often see in like the software or platform space. Like, our reviews are better. Or there's a news part at the top. We partnered with so and so. It's always features. And you're forcing people to kind of go through a checklist in their head of like, oh, you do this. What do they do? Oh, is that the same? The right side is like, here's some things that you can do. None of this is really speaking to me. The section right below it is, this is how it works. It's graphic, which is okay. It tells me how everything works, but I mean, let's be honest. Like, is this saying to me like you should really buy this? It's a little
This
bit.
is this is like an architecture of what's happening, but you don't know why you care that it's happening.
I don't know why I should care about any of this, right? And we're ripping on it because everyone knew it. Everyone came to the table and knew it. We did
Knew
not.
it.
We did not.
Yeah.
No one was offended. They came and they said, "We know this is awful. Go ahead and tell us it's awful." Um, so this is just a point of reference, in part because this is what we see so often, and what we always hear is, "Well, what else do you expect me to do?" I would love to have a message like Apple, but you're crazy if you think I'm going to go out on a ledge and have a message as radical as Think Different was, 20 years ago. Like, that's,
Yeah.
nope. I'd rather be safe and fit into the mold of what everyone else is doing, but maybe we do it a little bit better. Your team was not down with that. It wanted a huge transformation, and so I'm going to share. Let's take a look at the new message, which to me is worlds different. And for our part, we thought this was a risk. We often go forward with clients and show them various stages of messaging, like super safe. Like, this is like, we think, like, if you're feeling a little bit anxious about going, big, like, here's something safe. And then at the end of that spectrum is like, hey, you want to go big, go with this. And this was our big one that we saved till the very end to show your team that really sometimes you're not sure if the clients will get it, but it's a message around that speed. Everything can change in a day. Literally, Solver can get you up and started overnight rather than months. But it also speaks to a pain point around why you use a CPM, which is that the world is a fast moving place, and having to pull in your data from a bunch of spreadsheets or different disparate sources is really challenging and really makes it impossible to be flexible and nimble in a way, in the same way that working with a product or platform like Solver does. But what was your reaction when you first saw this message?
This message really resonated with our whole team. And it was so funny because when you guys brought this up originally, we found out very quickly who was the pessimist and who were the optimists on the team, because we all looked at it and, everyone was like, oh, like, you had everything can change in a day. And some people were like, yes, it can get so much better. You can have Solver and, you'll get your reporting and your dashboard and your consolidation like in the first day. And then we had the other flip side of that coin and people were like, yeah. And, the supply chain can, crash in a day. So, everything today, like, but then again, you roll it around to that is a pain point that we are helping to solve with the software, is that, as you said, it allows companies to be nimble, to do ad hoc and what if reporting, so that as they're guessing what's going to happen, you can see how that will impact your business and how to maneuver and pivot your business to be able to go through and get through, these changing times. So it was, I thought, it was a great message. It was really strong, and it really, depending on how you take that message, it rolls into so many aspects of what we're talking about, and what the software really does do.
It's one of the few times I've worked on a message where I think just changing the color of the sky would have changed the message, because you are doing this dance with like a fear message of like everything can change in a day,
In a
like
day.
natural disasters happen, markets crash, things happen. Are you ready for it? Versus, hey, everything can change. Like if this was a gray sky, suddenly it becomes a very fear-based message. And I think it strikes the balance.
We had the cloud conversation. Remember,
Yes.
as we were doing this, we were looking at the creative that goes with it. Like you said, because the message can flip one way to the other. I remember having the conversation with the clouds. How much clouds was too dark? How much goes to the foreboding versus like the happy clouds, which
it's a very Bob Rossi type, happy clouds versus a little negative. I think it landed in a good spot, but it gets to the point too of something that I think is very important. Of often we have these discussions around messages, and we'll say, the client will say, well, what do I do with this? It just lives atop my homepage. And it's like, no, like, I think a message like this is so dynamic. And it's one of my favorite that we've done because of how dynamic it is. Because if you think about it within a campaign or within content, you do have that flexibility to play to both sides of it. Like you can talk about, it is a chaotic world out there. Things are just constantly change very quickly. So you can message to having to be nimble and having to have all your data connected at one point. You can go that route, or you can also, and even if tomorrow, this was a big thing that the Solver team came to us and said, we don't know how long this differentiator of ours, the quick start, is going to be a differentiator. Maybe it's a year, but the industry will catch up eventually, as industries always do. And so they said so if that differentiator went away tomorrow, this is still a message that you can use, because it's still the value proposition of having a CPM, and one that nobody else is using. But at the time being, you can message two different ways. One, to the differentiator, that quick start. Everything can literally change overnight for you. You can undergo digital transformation, or this one of like, it's a crazy world and you need to be ready for every twist and turn. It's a message that sort of starts to, you can see as we went down the page, we always say, like, it doesn't lift, it's the start of your story. And as we go down the page, performs today while optimizing for tomorrow. So you start to get into that idea of what the value proposition is now for that quick start, but also for the future. All right.
Yep. No, it's been a really great message for us. And we've really been able to fold it into white papers, into blog posts, on booths. We've got this card now, and it really is, it's, it's a driving message, and it does have that sort of billboard effect that, when you have a messaging, and, I always say, the web is like a billboard, these days, and there's a lot of things, you got to catch people's attention right away. And it does have that ability to catch people's attention. They walk into the booth, they go, everything can change in a day. Tell me about that, so it does have that catchability too, that people remember it, they see it, and it makes them question. If they don't quite get it in the first hit, they go, okay, like, tell me about this. And when it sits out on its own. So
I want you to, you mentioned, like, it's been good for the team. And you mentioned, like, yes, this is a great inbound type, tactic strategy to have. Somebody comes in, they see you, or they see the message, or if they happen to run into you at an event, they see the message. But what other types of ways has this helped the team? And one of the ways that I'm thinking, just because I have a little bit of insight, is messages like this tend to allow teams from marketing all the way to sales to like have a talking point. It gives them something to latch
Mhm.
on to, even when
Yep.
they go out like on a sales call, or when they're doing outbound, to be able to rally around something that's cohesive and is unified. Has that been a benefit for Solver as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of trickled its way down the into the business itself and into the community itself within, the employees. Everyone's has embraced this message, and we've sort of paired it with the, accelerating better decisions. So everything can change in a day, accelerating better decisions. And those two pieces together have been very powerful throughout the whole organization, allowing us to kind of pull that string all the way through. And it's really, we're using it as sort of like a litmus test now, as we're putting things out, as people are talking, as we're talking about making internal decisions about processes and things like that. Is it living up to that message? Are we delivering that message? Is that helping push that along and really making that message true? So it really has been sort of transformative for us from a messaging standpoint, a sales standpoint, as well as internally. So it really has kind of filtered its way all the way through the organization.
Yeah, I think that's one of the great things. I know you work with, third party, vendors, and I think one of the great things is that, yes, it becomes a talking point, but in sort of listening to you describe it, you can tell that one of the other great benefits, and I think it's true of all strong messaging when companies embrace it, is it really becomes an identity for you, even if it's for the next year, year and a half. That you not only embrace and hold on to internally, but it gets projected out into the world. And you don't just become like, well, yeah, they're that CPM company. It's the no, they're that everything can change company. Like it becomes synonymous. It's the you're the where's the beef company. To hark back
Yeah.
to that Wendy's example.
Again, this is a world of ever-changing messaging and websites and emails. It doesn't necessarily mean you're writing it on a stone tablet and you have to live with it forever. So take the chance. Don't be afraid of it. Go out and try to differentiate yourself and see how it goes.
Yeah, I think the fear part is a great point, and it's usually not entirely justified. I would ask anyone that is interested in having a strong, creative, emotional message, but that lets that creep into the thought of just like, these are engineers. We're all people, and every time you're out in the wild in the world and you see a great message that makes you take a second look, remind yourself that you took a second look because it was a great message. And even though you might be looking at a consumer good or something that is, B2C, it does not change the impact that it could have if it was in B2B. You should be looking for that same kind of message. It'll have the same kind of impact. And so few companies are doing it in B2B that if you're able to pull it out, if you're able to execute on it, you're going to have a clear advantage, because 90% of the businesses out there right now are scared of doing anything different and won't do anything different. So be the one to take that leap. I want to thank Beth for joining me for this discussion. As always, it's been insightful and fun. I expect nothing less when I get together with you, Beth. We also touched on a lot of topics that you can get more information on in our other video series, whether it be around campaigns and how to connect great messages to that, how to build communities, and really about the state of messaging within B2B itself. So don't forget to check out the other episodes that you can find on our website. And don't forget, if you want to go deeper, you can also access our messaging development framework to try and create your own message, or if it's something that you don't feel comfortable doing but still want a little more insight around, we're also offering you the ability to sign up for a free review of your messaging to identify where perhaps you're coming up short and how it is that you could improve your story to be more differentiated in your space and connect with prospects and customers in a better way. Again, Beth, thanks so much for joining me, and I look forward to our next conversation out there in the world.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for having us.